As true full-blown SHTF gets closer and closer, so does this global takeover that's been making progress over the last couple of years. And with some new treaties that are being proposed by the World Health Organization, the power grab is happening right under your nose. And this is all happening because of a couple of reasons. One, it's because they're running out of time to keep using the steam that's left in this scheme we've all been dealing with for the last 2 years. And two, it's because this transition that they're trying to push on us has to happen sooner than later, or else people are going to lose interest in said transition. So all this is happening for a reason right now. And this proposed treaty is going to give power to the World Health Organization that no singular entity should actually have. This is why you need to pay attention to this and why you need to understand that this could put us in a very dangerous territory here in the near future. Now, this information was actually brought to my attention by Alaska Prepper, who runs a great YouTube channel and is a great person. So make sure you check out Alaska Prepper. I'll put a link up here if you want to see what he has to offer. But without him, I might not have been aware of this information. And so I wanted to give him credit where credit was due. Now, the World Health Organization is proposing what's being called a pandemic treaty at the World Health Assembly between May 22nd and May 28th of this year. And this treaty includes amendments to international health regulations that gives the World Health Organization an inordinate amount of power over sovereign countries. And that includes the United States. And many of these amendments that they're proposing were actually recommended by our current administration here in the United States. So that should tell you a couple of things about what everybody thinks is a great idea in the sense of a worldwide entity that can control an emergency crisis here in the future. And by the way, you and I aren't the ones who get to declare whether something meets the criteria of an emergency health crisis. The World Health Organization actually does, though. So, what do these amendments include, and why is this something you should be paying attention to, especially considering preparedness? Well, this is a big deal because at any point in time, the freedoms that you are accustomed to might be stripped away based on the fact that this entity will have the power to do so, all right? So here's what's in these amendments and why you should be concerned. Extra surveillance of nation states for a One Health approach. Basically, they can surveil countries however they feel fit in order to mitigate risk of something occurring there. Whether or not it doesn't make a difference, okay? 48-hour window to respond to World Health Organization collaboration. And once that 48-hour window closes, then the World Health Organization can move forward in whatever way they see fit based on the fact that a health emergency has been declared in your country, whether or not your country has taken the opportunity to respond to their collaborative offerings. And that is a big deal because basically they're saying you have 2 days to say yes or no, and if you don't respond, we're coming in and doing whatever we need to do based on what we feel is necessary. Doesn't sound good to me. It shouldn't sound good to you either. If that happened to you or I in our home based on a legal authority, that wouldn't fly now, would it? Okay? Now, it also grants regional directors the power to declare regional emergencies. And this is how things start to get broken up in a one world system, right? Where the globe is broken up into regions rather than countries. Because, you know, the West and the East and everything, that's just all it needs to be. No one needs to have sovereign borders or anything along those lines, right? You can see why this creates big problems for countries who value their sovereignty. So that is also allowed in these amendments. Expert teams and workers can be deployed in your country by the World Health Organization to combat whatever the threat may be, which means they're going to send foreign workers and experts into your country to tell your people how to operate, which obviously creates a power dynamic and a conflict of interest, regardless of how you want to look at it, and is an issue because basically a country should be able to operate on its own volition based on what's best for its interests. And what the World Health Organization is proposing through this pandemic treaty is that your best interests are not up to you. It's actually up to them, all right? Countries can also claim to be an affected party. So a country can just claim it's affected by this emergency in order to get whatever might be available in the sense of resources from the World Health Organization, which, by the way, many of these resources will probably be allocated from countries like the United States using the veil of the United Nations. So just something else to keep in mind. This also proposes the idea that an emergency committee will decide on whether or not you have a health emergency and whether it wants to share that information with its member states. So basically, this is a national security issue where the World Health Organization can say, hey, you have a crisis right now. And as a country, you could respond and say, I don't believe we do. This is just a localized event. Well, they can say, well, actually you do, and we just told everyone else about it. So now you're on the world stage as being the problem child, and however anyone else wants to respond based on travel restrictions, embargoes, restrictions of export and import, or anything else that could definitely wreck an economy is based on what the World Health Organization decides is fit, okay? They also want to establish a compliance committee, which will have investigative power in each country, okay? So, a lot of ministries have been proposed lately, haven't they? And here's an investigative committee from a worldwide organization that has numerous powers that aren't allowed to any other country to send in their people to your country to find out what may or may not be going right or wrong, and then to report on those findings back to the entity. Right? This is very interesting that they should be able to have basically a police force or an intelligence agency that can go into any country without regard and investigate whatever it is they feel is happening in the sense of an emergency, right? Look, I think we need some level of defense to pandemics here in the future. Of course, there is that threat always, and having a response to it is an important part of any preparedness planning. However, this reaches new levels of a power grab that I think we can all agree is dangerous, all right? And another thing it wants to do, or allows for in these amendments, is that it gives power to the Director General to make any decisions that they see fit without consulting member states. So they don't necessarily have to talk to the United States to make a decision on whether or not the United States needs an investigation or has a health crisis emergency or any other number of things that allows them to then operate within the country to do what it is they feel is necessary to protect the rest of the planet from another pandemic. Okay? This is what's happening. This is why this is important to keep an eye on. And this is why I'm glad Alaska Prepper brought this to everyone's attention and brought it to my attention, and why I wanted to repeat the message so that more and more people were made aware of it. This is the move that pushes things into that worldwide situation they've been talking about for the last few years. And at the same time, you have to understand that they're running out of time. They're running out of steam in order to put these things into place because everyone is moving on. People are moving on from all of the problems that persisted over the last couple of years, right? People are moving past mandates, or moving past restrictions, or moving past lockdowns. Unless you look at countries like China, where lockdowns are actually becoming even more aggressive. And then you start to realize that the relevancy of having that existing threat is very important to allow something like this to move forward and to gain the funding that's required in order to implement it. So here we are at a precipice once again where things could go one way or the other. And this is not something anybody wants to see happen, but yet this is what they're pushing for. And they are running out of time, which means not only should you be concerned about this whole scenario being put into place, but you should definitely be keeping an eye out for anything else that pops up within the next week or so that might push people's, I guess you would say, decision towards why this is important based on the fact that there's suddenly a threat that maybe didn't exist before. These are things we have to keep in mind, and to be as prepared as we possibly can, we have to discuss them. So I wanted to bring this to your attention. If you have anything else to add about this whole thing, leave it in the comments below. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prep.